Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In for November 11th, 2020. It's 11/11. That's kind of awesome. Maybe it's unlucky. I don't know. I always enjoyed 11/11. I like looking at the clock. It's an LED and see 1111. That's just I don't know. It's cool. There's no other really good reason for it. It's just I think it's cool. And you get to see it twice a day if you're not on the 24-hour clock. So that's kind of nice too. Today's topic, we're going to talk about Intel a little bit because Intel ain't doing so hot. And Apple had a big event recently and they made some announcements, and I don't think that helped Intel a whole lot. So let's talk about where Intel is today, where it's been, and where it might be going, and how it could improve its odds of being around for a long time. So that's what I want to talk about today. Before we get into that, I do want to announce one important thing. I have launched a Patreon. Yes, I've launched a Patreon. The reason I am doing this is because, as I mentioned in a previous video, which I mean, if you go to the video that should show up here, you'll hear that I've kind of been thinking about what's going on with the daily check-in, and honestly, I'm hoping to get a little extra funding to keep the daily check-in going at a high level of quality, which means I'd need to dedicate more time to it, which is an opportunity cost. So Patreon, there's 3 tiers, and the bottom one just gives you my eternal gratitude. The second one gets you some stickers and credits in the end of the videos, and the third one you get priority on suggesting topics for future videos. So that's what I have right now. It's a work in progress, but it's set up and the link is down in the description. Before we talk about today's topic, I want to check in with you. How you doing? How's Wednesday going? Wednesdays, it's a good day. I like Wednesdays. You're in the middle of the week. You've gotten through the worst of it, hopefully, and the best is yet to come. I hope that's the perspective you're taking. You're looking forward to Thursday and Friday and closing out the week and doing something exciting this weekend, probably by yourself because, COVID cases are kind of spiking right now, but like hopefully you're in a healthy mental place at this point in the week. It can be difficult, but you made it. It's Wednesday. Let's talk about Intel. So let me pull up my notes here. What did I want to talk about when it comes to the wonderful world of Intel? Well, Intel has really been, you'd call it like the undisputed chipset powerhouse since probably the early 90s, maybe even earlier than that. And I can still remember when my buddy got his 486 and he had the turbo button on the front of the machine, and you could press the turbo button and the light would come on and you knew it was Intel. And then they launched the whole Intel Xeon line and the Pentium. Oh my goodness, it's all about the Pentiums, baby. Weird Al parodied All About the Benjamins with Intel, which gave both of those songs, both the song and Intel, some serious street cred. You've made it when Weird Al includes you in a parody, and Intel was all over that. You had Intel Inside, and now that's been reused for all kinds of things. So like what I'm saying is, like, people know Intel. It's not like they are in danger of going away. But things have been a little rough. In the recent last 4 years, they have consistently missed targets for launches of their new chipsets. They've really struggled to get down to 10 nanometers and now 7, while the competition is talking about 5 and 3. So they keep saying that, they're on the cusp, but then they keep hitting these delays. And part of that has to do with the fact that they run their own fab plants. They don't farm that out to anybody else. And maybe that's a mistake. Maybe sometimes when something is really hard to do, it's best to go with individuals who specialize in that thing. And it appears that breaking point is right around 10 nanometer or 7 nanometer. It just gets too hard to both run the chip fab side of things and the chip design things and all the other businesses that Intel is involved in. They recently sold off some memory fab and memory plants to, I want to say, it was Hynix, maybe. That sounds right. They recently sold off some of that because they realized it's just not part of our core business. So they have been having those issues. At the same time, AMD has not been having those issues, which caused them to have a resurgence both on the desktop but also on the server market. How did that happen? Well, you had a couple things. You had price competition when it came to the public cloud. The public cloud is more interested in lowering the cost of the hardware they're purchasing, which is why they've started to offer AMD based uh, IaaS instances rather than using Intel based because they get it cheaper. So there's that eating into it. And also ARM. So I should probably mention ARM is eating into Intel's lunch. You've seen the rise of ARM servers, at least in AWS. And actually, one of my buddies did a performance analysis of running an application on ARM versus an Intel x86 CPU. And he found that he could run certain workloads faster and cheaper on ARM. Yeah, you had to have the ARM flavor of the application to do it, and there were some caveats around that, but the performance gains were real, and the lower cost was also equally real. So you've got that going on in the server market, and now you're seeing a flood of ARM-based desktops and laptops, mostly laptops. And leading that, or at least the most recent announcement, is Apple. Apple announced their M1 chip, which is an ARM-based chip. They have moved away from x86. Now, if you remember back in the day, I actually had a PowerPC Mac running OS 8, and that was a RISC-based processor that was not from Intel. And at a certain point, they decided to give up making their own chips. It didn't make sense for them at the time, and they went to using Intel. Now, once they came out with the iPhone and started using ARM processors in the iPhone, they started designing their own chips again. And that has, over time, led to them replacing their flagship products, their MacBook and their Mac Mini, with an ARM-based CPU that they're calling the M1. So now suddenly Intel's not in any of the Macs anymore. At the same time, Microsoft has made some serious movement into adopting Windows 10, the newest version of Windows 10, to also run on ARM. So now that's a viable prospect as well. It just seems like Intel isn't that important anymore when it comes to general CPU. Plus, you have to add to that that aside from general CPU, there's also been a move away from that with GPUs. You've seen the rise of companies like, I don't know, NVIDIA. And NVIDIA specializes in GPUs, and now they're buying ARM, so there's a whole conversation there. But the compute has moved away from that general CPU into specialized chips like GPUs. And now you're also seeing the rise of the use of a SmartNIC that has something called data processing units on it, or DPUs. That's another thing that is emerging. And NVIDIA has a partnership with VMware around Project what's this one called? There's so many. Monterey. Project Monterey is the one that includes that. Pensando is another firm that's doing the same thing. So moving the compute and data processing away from that central CPU and spreading it out to specialized chipsets. You've also seen the rise of programmable chipsets, FPGAs, and companies like Barefoot that got acquired. Now, I believe Intel actually bought Barefoot, which was probably a good idea because that's the sort of direction that Intel really needs to head in. So I would say at this point, Intel's at a crossroads and they need to make some serious and bold moves. It reminds me a little bit of Microsoft during the Ballmer period leading up to Satya taking over the company. And they really needed to make a hard pivot into a new direction because they were not very popular at the time. I'm sure many of you remember that. And what they ended up doing was embracing cloud and changing their culture. That's not easy. You need a charismatic leader to do that. And Satya really has done an amazing job with Microsoft. I feel that Intel, they need to do a similar sort of thing. They need to start by focusing on chip design and not fabrication. Leave the fabrication to those organizations that can specialize in it and just do the chip design, the thing that you are allegedly really, really good at. Do that chip design, do it better than anybody else, and have somebody else fab those chips. You also need to maybe license your designs out like ARM does. That could be a potential business model. I don't think Intel's going to go there, but it's absolutely a possibility. And I would say use the money that you make from selling off your fabs to purchase startups like Barefoot to build out what's actually interesting and moving forward in the land of silicon and chip design. Barefoot was a good pickup. Maybe do a few more of those. And then finally, clean house and shift the culture to be more innovative. And I know that's difficult to do. Microsoft did it by embracing openness and open source and things that it previously feared. IBM's trying to innovate their way out by buying Red Hat and changing their culture by letting Red Hat sort of lead the way. And they cleaved off a portion of their company and still called the New Co right now. I'm sure they're going to rename it. They carved off a portion of that old practice that wasn't going to make the transition. It makes sense. If you look at the overall stock prices for Intel, it actually dropped by 15% in October, and it's been fairly flat for the last 5 years. If you look at AMD, it's a hockey stick. It's a rocket ship. It went from like $2 to $50 or $60 a share in over the course of 5 years. That's ridiculous. And NVIDIA wasn't starting out nearly as low as AMD, but they've also taken off like a rocket ship. So it's not like the industry isn't growing. It's not like there isn't money to be made. It's up to Intel to make the hard decisions and changes it needs to internally to start leading the way again. So we'll see what Intel does, but right now it's dark times. I hope they dig their way out and find their way to the innovative light at the end of the tunnel. That's all I have for today. I hope you thought this was interesting and informative. If you did, hey, hit me up on Patreon or just subscribe to this or share it with somebody else. All of those things are appreciated. Until next time, stay healthy and stay safe out there. Bye for now.